The high plains of Wyoming were a liar. They whispered of freedom in the vast, unbroken blue of the sky and the golden ripple of knee-high grass that rolled to the edge of the world. But Magdalena knew the truth. The land was not a promise. It was a cage. Its beauty was a gilt finish on a raw iron trap of isolation, and the wind that never ceased its high, lonesome song was the sound of the key turning in the lock. She had been a city girl, born and raised to the sounds of cobblestone and conversation in Boston. She knew of hardship, but it was the hardship of damp parlors and social ledgers. She knew nothing of this silence that pressed in on the eardrums, this sun that baked the earth into a cracked, unyielding plate. She had come here for Thomas, with his dreamer's eyes and calloused hands, who saw not an empty waste, but a blank canvas. "It's a kingdom, Maggie," he'd said, his arms spread wide, the wind tearing the words from his mouth. "Our kingdom." Their kingdom was a 300-acre homestead, with a small, sturdy cabin he had built with his own 2 hands, a lean-to barn, and a single, stubborn well. It was 10 miles to the nearest fence line and 30 miles to the nearest town, a muddy one-street affair called Terminus. For 2 years, she had fought the land, fought the loneliness, fought the creeping sense of dread that came with the dusk. She missed the sound of another woman's voice. She missed the feel of a paved street beneath a proper shoe. But she loved Thomas, and so she stayed, her world shrinking to the perimeter of their small, sun-bleached home. The dread had been worse these last few months. Rumors, carried by the few riders who passed by, or the barkeep in Terminus, spoke of Silas Vulturecroft and his gang. They weren't common outlaws, the stories said. They weren't just after cattle or gold. They were after pain. They were wraiths of the Badlands, men who had lost their souls and now sought to snuff out the souls of others. Thomas had bought a new repeater and taught her how to use it, his face grim. "It's just precaution, Maggie. They stick to the high trails. They won't bother us." But they did. It happened not in the dark, as she had always feared, but in the blinding, indifferent light of a Tuesday morning. Thomas was out mending the south fence, a mile away. She was in her nightgown, sleeves rolled up, her hands deep in dough for the week's bread. The first sign was their dog Buster, a scruffy little terrier, letting out a single, terrified yelp before being cut off with a sickening thwack. Magdalena's heart stopped. She wiped her floured hands on her apron and ran to the window. 4 men. They were riding not on the path, but straight through their meager corn patch, trampling the stalks. The man in the lead was huge, mounted on a black warhorse, a greasy duster flapping around him. This had to be Croft. He dismounted, and his laughter was a dry, rattling sound. He didn't knock. The boot that came through the door sent it flying off one hinge, the wood splintering. She screamed. She hadn't meant to. It was a thin, animal sound. "Well now," the man, Croft, said, his eyes, dark and reptilian, raking over her. Her simple white cotton nightgown felt like a shroud. "What's this little dove doing so far from the roost?" His men, reeking of whiskey and unwashed bodies, poured in behind him, their spurs ringing on the floorboards Thomas had so carefully laid. They were loud, bright, and terrifying. "Please," she whispered, backing away until she hit the cold stone of the hearth. "Please, just take what you want. My husband, he'll be back. He has money in town." "Oh, we'll wait for him," Croft grinned, revealing a row of yellowed, broken teeth. He pulled a knife from his belt and idly tested its edge on his thumb. "And we'll take what we want, won't we, boys?" They tore the cabin apart. They were not robbers. They were vandals, agents of chaos. They smashed the jars of preserves she had so painstakingly put up. They slashed her mattress, feathers exploding into the air. One of them, a reedy man with a hair lip, found her small music box, a gift from her mother. He wound it up, and the tinny, delicate sound of a waltz filled the cabin. He listened for a moment, his head tilted, before smashing it to pieces with the butt of his pistol. Through it all, Magdalena stood by the hearth, frozen in a terror so profound it was almost a religious state. This couldn't be real. This was a nightmare. She would wake up, and Thomas would be there, and then he was. Maggie. His voice was a roar of disbelief and fury. He stood in the broken doorway, the repeater rifle in his hands. He hadn't even had time to raise it. Croft was lit. He had been waiting for this. He drew his revolver in a motion so smooth it seemed casual. The shot was deafening in the small cabin. Magdalena saw a small, dark hole appear on Thomas's shirt, right over his heart. He looked down at it, a look of profound, almost comical surprise on his face. Then his eyes met hers, filled with a terrible, silent apology. He fell forward onto the floor he had built. The world went silent for Magdalena. The whooping of the men, the crackle of the fire they had just set to her curtains. It all faded. There was only the still, unmoving form of her husband on the floor. The scent of gunpowder and, beneath it, the smell of the bread dough. Forgotten on the table, she didn't feel the hands that grabbed her. She didn't feel the rough rope that bound her wrists. She was a doll, empty and discarded. They dragged her outside, her bare feet protesting the sharp stones of the yard. Croft mounted his horse and pulled her up in front of him, his arm a steel band around her waist. "Burn it all," he commanded. They torched the cabin, the barn, everything. The flames roared, black smoke blotting out the perfect blue sky. They rode away, leaving the body of her husband to be consumed by the fire that was eating their entire life. They rode for hours, deep into the unfamiliar, broken land of the Badlands. Magdalena was numb, a passenger in her own horror. The man holding her, Croft, would occasionally lean in, his breath a foul miasma in her ear. "You're Vulture's woman now, girl. You'll learn to like it." They made a sloppy camp as dusk fell. They were arrogant, drunk on their own cruelty, and the last of Thomas's whiskey. They tied her to a scrub brush, her bonds loose and careless. They thought she was broken. They were right. But a thing that is broken has nothing left to lose. As the night deepened and the men fell into a drunken slumber, a different part of her woke up. It was not courage. It was a cold, sharp-edged thing. It was hate. It was the refusal to be this. She worked at the ropes. Her wrists were raw, but the hemp was old and frayed. It finally gave. She didn't pause to think. She just moved, a shadow detaching herself from the bush. One of the men, a younger one on watch, stirred. "Who's there?" he slurred. She froze. He stood up, peering into the dark. He saw her, and his eyes widened. He lunged, not for his gun, but for her, a greedy look on his face. "Get back here, you." He grabbed the shoulder of her nightgown. She twisted, clawing at his face. He grunted and shoved her, drawing a knife. Stubborn ain't. She didn't see the blade so much as feel it. A searing white-hot pain tore through her right shoulder. She screamed, a ragged, desperate sound, and stumbled back. The man looked at the blood on his knife, then at her. The scream had roused the others. "She's loose. Croft, she's loose." That was all she needed. She turned and ran. She ran without thought, without direction, fueled by a primal terror. She plunged into the darkness, the only sound the pounding of her own heart and the shouting of the men behind her. She heard a gunshot, and something whined past her ear, but she didn't stop. She ran all night. Her bare feet were shredded by rocks and thorns. The cold of the high desert night seeped into her bones, but the pain in her shoulder was a fire that kept her moving. She stumbled, fell, and rose again, her nightgown torn to rags, caked in dirt and her own blood. She had no idea where she was, only that she was moving away from them. When the first hint of gray light touched the eastern sky, she saw it, a dark line in the distance, a fence. It was the fence line for the Broken Spur Ranch, a place she had only heard of, miles and miles from her own homestead. It was a line of civilization, A border. She ran for it, her lungs burning, her vision tunneling. She could hear them, faintly, in the distance. They were on horseback, fanning out, searching. They would find her. This open prairie was a killing floor. She reached the fence, her last ounce of strength gone. She grabbed the rough, splintered wood of the post as if it were the hand of God. She collapsed against it, her legs giving out, sinking into the dry grass. She was done. She couldn't move another inch. She was going to die here, barefoot, in the dirt. Just like Thomas. She closed her eyes, gasping, waiting for the sound of the hoofbeats. Magdalena's eyes snapped open. Her heart leaped into her throat. He was here. One of them had found her. A man on a tall bay horse came over the rise. He was not one of them. He was dressed in a clean vest, a dark hat, and a red bandana. A badge on his vest glinted in the new morning sun. He reined in his horse, his eyes taking in the scene with a shocking, impossible calm. A small sausage-shaped dog trotted at his horse's heels. Looking at her with a curious head tilt, the man swung down from his saddle in one fluid motion. He didn't reach for his gun. He moved slowly, deliberately, as if not to spook a deer. He crouched, his knees cracking, keeping a respectful distance. He looked at her, his gaze steady, talky. He looked at her, his gaze steady, talky. U.S. Marshal Wes Kane had been tracking the Croft gang for 2 weeks. Ever since they'd hit the bank in Cheyenne and killed 2 tellers for the sheer sport of it. He was a patient man. He understood that men like Croft were not hunted like deer. They were trapped like wolves. You found their habits, their territory, and you waited for their arrogance to betray them. His only companion on these long, quiet rides was Shorty, a dachshund mix of improbable courage and boundless loyalty, who was currently sniffing the air with a low whine. "What is it, boy?" Wes murmured. Shorty was a better tracker than most men, and he never gave a false signal. He'd been worried for the last half-mile, and Wes had finally unholstered his Colt. Resting it on his thigh, he'd seen the smoke plume an hour ago, a greasy black stain against the pristine morning. It was in the wrong place. Too far south for the broken spur, too far north for anything. It was a homestead, and homestead smoke was white and thin. This was the smoke of ruin. Then Shorty darted ahead. Wes spurred his horse, Captain, over the low rise, and he saw her. She was a ghost, a battered, terrified spirit, clinging to a fence post, as if it were the last solid thing on earth. He took her in instantly, the bare feet, bloodied and raw, the white slip, torn and smeared with dirt and gore, the wound on her shoulder, a ragged, ugly gash, still weeping blood, and her eyes. Dear God, her eyes. He had seen terror before, but this was something deeper. This was a soul that had been hollowed out. He dismounted, his every movement slow and broadcast. He left his rifle in its scabbard. Shorty trotted up and sat, whining softly. Wes crouched, bringing himself lower than her. He knew this look. She wasn't seeing him. She was seeing the men she'd just escaped. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and calm. He called it his ledge voice, for talking men down from high places. "My name is Marshal Wes Kane. I'm a federal officer. You're safe now." The woman just stared, her chest hitching with frantic, shallow breaths. She was about to break, and he needed her to hold on just a little longer. "I am not with them, ma'am," he said, holding his hands up, palms out. "I'm hunting the men who did this to you." At the word men, a crack appeared in her terrifying stillness. A sob tore from her throat, a sound of such profound agony it made Wes's jaw clench. "Thomas," she choked out, the name a shard of glass. They killed him. My Thomas. They killed my Thomas. They burned it all. They burned him." Wes's blood ran cold. He had his answer about the smoke plume. "Who, ma'am?" he asked, his voice gentle, but with a new, hard edge beneath it. "Who did this?" She was looking past him, at the open prairie, her eyes wide with the terror of pursuit. "He'll come back," she whispered, rocking. "He's coming for me. He said I was his ... double quotes who?" Wes pressed, a little sharper. She focused on him, her gaze finally connecting. "Croft," she breathed. "Silas Croft." Wes Kane's world snapped into focus. The bank robbery in Cheyenne evaporated. The abstract pursuit of a gang of outlaws became a concrete and holy mission. This was no longer about the law. This was about retribution. "All right," he said, his voice all business now. He unhooked his canteen and moved forward slowly. She flinched, but he stopped, holding it out. "Magdalena. My name is Magdalena." "Magdalena," he repeated. "You need to drink, and we need to get you off this fence line. Can you stand?" She couldn't. Her legs were shot. He holstered his pistol, slung his canteen, and walked to her. She tensed, but he was quick and impersonal. He scooped her up in his arms. She weighed nothing. She was a bundle of rags and shivering bones. She buried her face in his vest, her body racked with silent, shuddering sobs. "It's all right, ma'am," he said gruffly, carrying her to Captain. "I've got you." The farmhouse in the distance was the main house of the Broken Spur Ranch. It was run by Martha Byrne, a widow in her 60s, whose toughness was legendary in the territory. She was, in Wes's opinion, the only person within 50 miles who wouldn't be afraid of Silas Croft. He rode up to the house, Magdalena in his arms, Shorty trotting behind. Martha was on the porch before he'd even dismounted, a shotgun resting in the crook of her arm. Her stern, wrinkled face took in the scene, and her eyes softened for just a moment. "God in heaven," she breathed, setting the shotgun down. "Bring her in, Marshal. Bring her in." They spent the next hour in a flurry of activity. Martha, with a gentle efficiency that belied her gruff exterior, cut away the ruined gown, cleaned and stitched Magdalena's shoulder, and wrapped her in a thick quilt. She forced broth and laudanum down her throat, clucking and murmuring like a mother hen. Magdalena, finally, blessedly, fell into a dark, drugged sleep in Martha's own bed. Wes stood on the porch, washing the caked blood from his hands and vest in a basin. "So," Martha said, coming out with 2 cups of coffee, "Vultures brewed." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Wes said, taking the cup. "Killed her husband, burned their homestead, took her, and she got away," Martha said, a flicker of fierce pride in her eyes. "She's got grit. What's your play, Marshal?" "He'll be back," Wes said, staring out at the prairie. "He won't let this go. A man like Croft, his pride is everything. Her escaping, ... that's a slight he can't abide. He'll come looking for her. He knows this ranch. He knows every rock and draw in this territory. He knows she'd come here. It's the only sanctuary for 20 miles. He'll come. Then we'll be ready," Martha said, picking up her shotgun. "You want me to send my hand, Jose, for the soldiers at Laramie?" Wes shook his head. "No, that's 2 days' ride, and they'll be here by nightfall. This is my fight, Martha. I just need you to keep her safe. Bar the doors. Stay away from the windows. When they come, you let me handle it." Martha looked at him, one man against a gang. "You're a fool, Wes Kane." "Yes, ma'am," he said, finishing his coffee, "but I'm the fool with the badge." He spent the afternoon preparing. He moved Captain and Martha's horses into a small, hidden box canyon half a mile away. He didn't want the gang to know he was here. He wanted them to ride right in. He checked his repeater, his revolver, and a spare pistol he kept in his saddlebag. He placed the repeater in the barn's hayloft, which gave him a clear view of the entire ranch yard. He put the spare pistol and a box of cartridges in the kitchen. Then, he waited. Shorty, sensing the tension, curled up at the base of the hayloft ladder, silent and watchful. The sun began to dip, painting the sky in violent streaks of orange and purple. The wind died down, and a heavy, expectant silence fell over the ranch. Wes watched, unmoving, from the darkness of the loft. They came just as the last light was fading. 3 riders materializing from the dusk like phantoms. Wes recognized Croft in the lead. They reined in at the edge of the yard. "Martha." Croft's voice was a gravelly roar. "You in there, old woman? I'm looking for something that belongs to me. A little broken dove. Send her out, and we'll let you live." The house remained dark and silent. "Don't make me come in, Martha. I'll burn this place to the ground, just like the last one." "She's not here, Croft." Wes's voice boomed from the hayloft. The reaction was instant. The 3 men scattered, diving from their horses, drawing their guns. A shot rang out from Croft, thudding into the barn wall. "A marshal," one of the men yelled, taking cover behind the water trough. "It's a trap. He's one man," Croft roared, his voice laced with fury. "He was behind the main corral fence. Kill him, and burn the house." The man at the trough, the reedy one with the hair lip, raised his head to fire at the loft. Wes was ready. He squeezed the trigger of his repeater. The shot was clean. The man slumped over the trough, his gun splashing into the water. The second man, who had dived behind a woodpile, began firing wildly at the barn, trying to give Croft cover. Wes ignored him. He was focused on Croft, but Croft was smart. He was using the other man as a distraction, low crawling along the fence line, making for the house. He was going for Magdalena. "Damn it," Wes snarled. He couldn't get a clear shot. He scrambled down the ladder, grabbing Shorty and shoving him into an empty grain barrel. "Stay." He ran from the barn, keeping low, sprinting for the house's back door. The man at the woodpile saw him and spun, firing. A bullet tore through the sleeve of Wes's shirt, stinging like a wasp. Wes didn't slow. He hit the back door of the kitchen, kicking it open, his revolver in his hand. He heard a crash from the front of the house. The front door. He moved through the dark kitchen, his boots silent on the stone. He entered the main room. Silas Croft was there, a huge dark shape against the paler darkness of the front window. He was laughing, a low, confident chuckle. "Come out, little dove. The marshal's dead. It's just you and me now. ... No." The voice was not Wes's. It came from the shadowed alcove by the fireplace, Magdalena. She was standing there, not in the quilt, but in one of Martha's dressing gowns. Her dark hair was matted, her face pale as bone, but her eyes were 2 burning embers in the dark. In her hands, she held Martha's shotgun. It was shaking, but it was pointed straight at Croft's chest. "You, ... Croft's laugh died, replaced by a snarl of pure rage. "You stupid ... He raised his pistol. "Drop it, Croft," Wes ordered, stepping out from the kitchen doorway. Croft was trapped. He spun, a wild animal, trying to decide which threat to take first. He made his choice, swinging his gun toward the marshal. 2 shots exploded in the small room. So close together, they sounded like one. Wes's shot hit Croft in the chest. Sounded like one. Wes's shot hit Croft in the chest.